Chris, how you doing? Good to see you. Good morning.
Morning to you as well, Tony. Good to see you again since last week.
Yeah. How is it up in Scotland today?
Getting cold, getting windy. So the shorts are finally away in the wardrobe for the winter, I think.
Not much different down here in Manchester, but we're used to it. We're used to it. So, what have you got on this week? What are you doing?
Winter, I think. I've been at a golf tournament for the last 3 days. So one of the golfers I work with, and so this podcast, delighted to be on. And then I'll tune in again with Burton this weekend, who I work with closely.
Well, I have to say, following on from last week at the Sporting Directors course, the feedback we've had from the delegates that were in the room was really, really interesting. Positive, lots of questions. As always, with a topic and a subject like this, it is somewhat different, creates an element of discomfort, which is cool. We like that. We want to get people thinking, and we want to take people out of what they're used to. So the feedback has been really, really useful. Is that something that you're used to?
Yeah, I think so. What you said about, I suppose, the feeling of discomfort was something which I expected after last week. So there was one or two people in the audience in the group that said, "Oh, it's quite uncomfortable," and there was some of it that was quite hard hitting and difficult to watch. But then my experience of doing this with teams or individual athletes, it's the fear of the unknown to begin with, isn't it? They don't know about it. So when they see something for the first time, like all human beings, will make a judgment about it and will decide, is that for me or is it not? But when you learn a bit about it and you see the benefits of something, you suddenly go, oh, actually, I can see the logic behind this. And this could be something that I look at, but I need to learn about it. So, yeah, I would agree with you. To begin with, like anything new, there are feelings of discomfort, but the more you look into something, the more familiar and comfortable you become
So
with
can
it.
you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris? It would be good to fill in the gaps with regards to your background, how this all started, and bring us through to today with regards to who you've worked with and who you're working with. And then we'll go into more detail around theming, which was the theme, pardon the pun, of the presentation last week you did with Gary Bowyer on the Sporting Directors course, and then we'll delve deeper into that to pull it to pieces, to get a real good understanding of what it is, but more importantly, from my perspective, how you deliver it in a real world sporting environment.
Well, firstly, my background's in education, so I'm from a teaching family. My mum and dad were both teachers, so growing up, seeing my dad coming in and out in a tracksuit every day as a PE teacher and asking him questions like, "Do you get to play football and do you get to do rugby and gymnastics?" and being brought into the school sometimes and being allowed to go on the equipment as a wee, that's where I got my inspiration from. So became a PE teacher after I left school, and a couple of years ago I decided to come out. Rugby's my sort of long term passion alongside golf as well. Uh, Stopped playing rugby when I was about 24, just repeated recurring injuries, and went into coaching and started really getting the bug for coaching and put a lot of time into my self development, did a lot of travel, developed a lot of really good relationships with coaches in the professional game, and a couple of years ago decided to take the plunge and go into professional coaching. So I was doing that essentially off my own back and not being paid for it. So came a point where I went, right, what am I going to do to make some money? And was doing a bit of consultancy work with Eamon Devlin, as you know, at Minute Nine. So got to work with some pretty big sports teams there. And then latterly, I've gone off in my own direction. And I suppose through opportunity and good timing, being put in touch with some coaches in the professional world, such as Gary, for example, and Felipe Contepomi with the Argentinian national team, and I've now arrived at a point where mindset is something that I'm really passionate about, and I've always used as part of. As a teacher, you're a practitioner of psychology. When you're working with children, you're trying to motivate them to get them sometimes to do things they don't want to do. Particularly when you're teaching PE, and there's a lot of self-conscious young people who are feeling judged and who are very scared quite a lot of the time of trying something new, and the scrutiny, I suppose, that comes with being in a class with other teenagers. So that's something I've always done. Studied psychology to an extent at university as part of my degree as well. And I'm considering, I think I am going to go back to university next year and do masters. So for the time being, I'm filling in that gap, and I wouldn't say found my calling, but I'm at a stage now where I've got a very strong interest in working with either individual athletes or with teams, and how we can enhance the mental side of our game. And theming is one of the things I do. So that's where I've come from and where I am, I suppose, in a nutshell.
So just picking up on a name that you mentioned there, and we'll come back into this in a little bit more detail. You mentioned Gary. So for those of people that are listening into this, that's Gary Bowyer, who currently is the manager for Burton Albion. You've also done some work across rugby, football, and golf. But interestingly, you've done some work with the Pumas over in Argentina.
Um, Back in January, we were doing a performance review as part of the Minute 9 team with the Pumas. So Eamon and I were down in London and at the Lensbury Hotel where they were based, just to get to know the team. So we were going to be doing a game day review for them for their match against the British Lions in Dublin in June. So we took the time to go meet them and then have a look at. They were doing an alignment camp, so for anybody that's not familiar with professional level sport, teams, international teams in particular, will often come together right at the start of a calendar year, and the coaches will set out vision, mission statement, values, behaviours. They'll go through game model for the year. They'll compare stats from the previous year and look at where we can improve. So they were doing that like a lot of other teams will do at the start of the year, but the difference is because they're Argentina, but a lot of their players are based in Europe. They met in London, so it was a good time for us to go down. And we were on the bus on the way to. They were doing a bit of fitness testing, so Bronco test and some max speed stuff down where London Irish train, or where London Irish trained, where the GB7s team are. And I was on the bus and I was sitting next to one of their coaches, Kendrick Lynn, who's a Kiwi. And I asked him, I said, do you do any theming? Do you use themes in your weekly match prep? And he said, we've touched on it, but we've not done it fully yet. And it's something we're potentially looking to implement and potentially go with somebody external, but we've not quite decided what we're going to do with it yet. So the next time I spoke to Felipe after the camp, sent him a couple of messages with some feedback on what they were doing, and I think it landed well. That the feedback, there was a couple of things that I had seen just around how they set up meetings and a bit of retrieval practice for getting information from players. And then I said, look, I'm currently doing this with a professional football team, but rugby's my background. I can help you with this if it's something you're looking into. And he said, yeah, we are interested in it. And I put myself out there, as you've got to do sometimes, and just said, look, can I present to you? And if you like what you see, I'll happily come in and help you with no charge attached. Straightforward. And there's a bit of advice I got from a number of people is to begin with, when you're setting out these things, you got to put yourself out there and sometimes offer things for free just to build a bit of trust. So we then set off on a journey from April time, planning for the tests in June against England. So that's how that came around. It was I suppose a meeting, a connection to begin with, and then, like most people do when they're working in teams or sport or even business, is just building a bit of mutual trust and wouldn't say identifying a gap, but asking them if they've considered something, and they said they had, and my skill set aligned with that. So it was a good opportunity. And yeah, if I didn't ask, I don't think I would have got the opportunity. So
So let's get into theming then, Chris. What is it?
short version's a psychological coaching tool, which connects a team or an athlete to a central mindset or a greater purpose.
And can you give us some just practical examples of one or two applications that you've used? You walk into a dressing room, and you talk to a head coach, you talk to a performance director that's got to get approval maybe from those up above that this is what we're going to do and this is why. Give me a real world practical example to explain what that could look
So
like,
if
and
I
then
was
we'll.
walking into a dressing room for the first time, and there was a team either. I look at teams in three different ways. So you've either got a team who are the top third, who are chasing maybe a promotion or a playoff or a cup win. You've got teams in the middle who are safe, but they also know they're not going to be able to hit the jackpot. And then you've got the teams at the bottom who are fighting for their lives. So straight away, you've got three different mindsets that teams can be in, and it's explaining to the coach or the athlete, look, here's how we can frame the situation that we're in line with an image, in line with a story, in line with a film, some literature, for example, that is going to give us just a little bit of a psychological boost and a bit more purpose to what we're doing. So, what you're doing is you're essentially saying, look, we're going to add a bit of a mental skills program to what you're doing in your technical, tactical, and physical week. But we're not going to do it in a way that players feel like they're taking time out of their schedules to sit down and talk about their fears or their worries or how they cope with certain situations. We're going to put something across that people watch and they go, oh yeah, that's very similar to what we're doing just now. So a good example that I used last year was team were really worried about playing a game without a star player, and the example we used was, and I'll come back to this later, was from the Batman films, The Dark Knight Rises. Somebody actually said we need to take a leap of faith this weekend without this player. So it became the perfect. So I gave them the video of Bruce Wayne trying to escape from the prison, and making the jump without the rope, where he hangs onto the balcony and climbs out and goes and saves the city. So in doing that, I would say 90% of the players and the staff within that team will have probably seen that film. And when you're watching it, there's no technical or tactical information that gets thrown back at you. What there is there's words, there's phrases, and there's feelings. And they see that and they go bravery, they go taking a leap. They see things like is good overcoming evil. There's a story that's created with it, and it inspires people, makes them feel good. So a small clip like that attached to the situation that a team is in can transform the mindset of everybody in the room. And if you can do it with a sporting story, it's even more impactful, because sports are very similar, whether it's boxing, cycling, ballet dancing, rugby, baseball, tennis, cricket. It's all about how do we achieve a certain outcome based on the situation we're in and the people we've got around us and the circumstances we face. So as soon as you can do that and talk to coaches, I guess, or individual athletes about other people that have done this, and the power it can have, and relate it to a little bit of research and what the purpose is behind it, it becomes very meaningful. And Wayne Smith, who's a coach I have huge admiration for, he was on a podcast recently, and he said, if you do something without meaning, it becomes meaningless, and it really stuck with me. And I feel that the use of themes as a mindset tool just provides a little bit more meaning to what we're doing as a team or as an individual during our week in the process of your career and time in the game.
So if you're working with a rugby team or a football team, the theme that you bring to the table, does it have to be a theme from that sport? Can it be a theme from outside of that sport, or is that not specifically the purpose? It's just about matching the right feeling, the right kind of ambience relative to where they are in the season.
Yes, what you said latterly, it's what fits for the team just now. So what I've found is athletes, individual athletes, and team sports quite like learning from other sports and seeing what's been done. So if you're playing a physical team sport, um, my experience now has told me that players who are going into a contact sport where they're going to have to be pretty brave and there's a serious risk of injury, they need a certain level of edge and they need to be resilient, but they also need to be prepared for battle. So, contact sports that are very much one on one, so things like UFC go down very, very well, boxing goes down very, very well because that is I suppose, a different version of what they're about to go into. Rugby, for example, you're trying to go over my try line, I'm trying to go over yours, and I can put my body in the way and physically stop you, but then it becomes a battle of will, particularly the higher the level you get and the closer the games get. So, looking at physical sports such as a UFC fight where you're in a cage with one other person and there's only three results and you get to decide what you do, and there's not really any way out of that. So it's very much you, your thoughts, and what you do with them seems to be very, very impactful. Um, History tells us a lot about behaviours that have been repeated by certain famous athletes and teams, and they all seem to repeat themselves over time. So, going back to boxers like Muhammad Ali, for example, it's not just about the way he fought, it's also about the way he carried himself and what he stood for, which can often really align with the values that teams set out for themselves. So, two examples there, boxing and UFC, but also um, sports that are attached to films as well, that are a bit more in the mainstream media, particularly with the age of quite a lot of the athletes now. So one we refer quite a lot to is American football, because there's quite a lot of films made. The replacements, Friday Night Lights, any given Sunday. You can often attach something to a movie scene, which can be quite inspiring. But I'm now at a point where I've done so many different ones, and it always comes back to what is the mindset that we need the players to have when they all arrive at the game and they're ready to go, first and foremost. But I believe that you get proper pressure once per game. So the moment where everybody in the stadium watching on TV knows this is the moment where the game's going to be won or lost, and is the team going to come on the right side of it? What we want the players to be thinking at that point is something that an image in here where they don't need to talk to each other. So it's the famous Ian McGeechan line speech when he talks about at some point today on the field it'll just be a look. And what I would like to think is when the players look at each other, they're thinking about what was played in the dressing room before they went out. So we had a really good example last year of the Brownlee brothers, the British triathletes, and the mindset.
Yeah, I remember that. That was powerful.
Very powerful. And that was perfect for the situation the team was in last year, in which the manager had said, at some point today, we're going to have to pick each other up and drag each other over the line. Like, this is going to be really, really difficult. He had already foreseen the fatigue in the team and the opposition that was coming and the strength of them. So the team talk was the video of the Brownlee brothers carrying each other over the line and getting the feedback from the players after the game. They said it was spooky because at some point in the game they were all looking at each other and going, "This is the moment we were all talking about where we're going to have to start carrying each other." And they actually did do it. And in the game review, you could see them pulling each other up off the ground. They were running a bit harder for each other. So I think different sports or similar mindsets from out with the team's context are sometimes more powerful because there's no preconceived judgment about, oh, I've seen that player, he's not great, or that team ended up actually losing that season. There's no correlation. It's just what they see and what they feel in that moment. And more often than not, if it's been a well thought out process, it's very, very impactful.
It's extremely thought provoking, isn't it? I've been in hundreds and hundreds of dressing rooms over the years during my career, and a season can be a long drag at times. And the manager, the performance staff can be delivering the same message over and over and over again. And at some point, it can lose its impact. And we're now, I think today is October the 9th. We're potentially entering that time of the season in football when we start to see a number of head coaches losing the jobs. Um, and it's such a competitive environment now that coaches have to have other skill sets, other techniques that they can use in order to get the very, very best out of their team. And I can see completely how this can re-stimulate players, recalibrate individuals and a team collectively to feel closer together, to develop that emotion that's required to, as you just said then, look at each other and say, okay, this is the moment where we decide which way the season's going to go. That said, it takes a skilled individual to deliver this, in my opinion, Chris. You may disagree with me, but it takes an emotionally intelligent head coach or sporting director, because I could see how you could use themes across different industries, not just sport. So it takes a highly skilled individual to be able to take this on board, understand it, be courageous enough and brave enough to walk into the dressing room where you've got some hardcore professional athletes that have lots of success and lots of failure and everything in between them. So initially to engage them, to get them on board, to position this so that they understand this is not a gimmick and it's got a real value added to them. It takes a skilled individual. It takes a skilled coach. In my opinion, is that something that you would agree with?
100%. And I think not just being skillful, being curious and being being brave with it and aligning it with their principles as a coach. So I think your point about we're getting to that stage of the season where there's going to be change and it already has started happening. Um, Players will feel that things are becoming very repetitive. So if you go and click on a YouTube video of a game of football from, let's say, 1966. I'm north of the border, so we've heard about the World Cup win in 1966 quite a lot. But if you went and clicked on the video of the World Cup final in 1966, the game hasn't changed that much to today. There's still 11v11. You're trying to go forward, you're trying to score goals, and you're trying to prevent the opposition from doing that. The ways in which we can play the game have changed, but the fundamental purpose of football, rugby, golf, tennis, whatever you're playing, has remained the same. Like somebody a long time ago made up a game that was meant to be fun, and there's different ways of achieving the outcome of it.
Yes, I agree with that completely. Would you agree that the game hasn't changed, i.e., the rules predominantly are the same, and the purpose behind winning and losing, etc.? Again, in my experience, I think the people playing the game have changed because culturally we've moved on hugely in that 60, 70, 80 years, whatever that may be now. And also the managers and the head coaches that are now in charge of these teams have also changed for the very reasons that we've just spoken about. So how do you feel about that?
Again, yeah, agree totally. I think we are now in an age where there's a lot more sophistication around coach education
Yeah,
and
that's the point. Yeah, it's more complex, I think now, isn't it? More complex, more complicated.
yeah, far more complex. Yeah, and we're not just in a position where you can be coaching your local Sunday League team and then the next day be coaching a Premier League team. Like there's a big process to go through to get to that level. and coaching has become quite an attractive profession, but it's very difficult to climb that ladder. So what I've found, just going back to the initial point, is the intelligent managers, intelligent coaches. So Gary and Felipe were perfect for this because highly emotionally intelligent and understood that human beings, particularly adults, get a huge sense of enjoyment of learning and staying curious. So the players know how to play the game, and if we give the same tactics or the same team talk most weeks, it becomes very robotic and repetitive. So adding something in, such as a theme and a story for the week and a mindset that we're going to attach ourselves to, allows the players to experience something that not a lot of other of their competitors will be doing that week, and keeps them curious. And I sat down with a couple of the Burton players last week in the hotel the night before the game, and these are two players who are extremely experienced. One of them's just come from Wrexham, so he's been part of that um, double promotion title winning Ryan Reynolds Las Vegas experience, and and he was saying that he loves being managed by Gary because of how creative he is and how he puts people first, and every week's a story, and they don't know what's going to come next. So it's almost as if the technical and tactical stuff becomes subsidiary. It's like, yeah, well, of course we know how to do that, but what are we getting that's extra this week, and what are we looking forward to in terms of a story? And he thinks it's just a genius bit of coaching because it adds value to everything they're doing and it gives more meaning. So I do think
Fine, Chris. I think that we live in a world now where that human connection is so much more important. Going back in the day, you talk about the England World Cup win in the '60s. Culturally, it was so different then, and that human connection was very dislocated from manager to player. But now, individuals, and I'm not putting people into boxes here, but individuals do need, I believe, that human approach. And of course, I often come across a saying where people will say, treat people the way you want to be treated. I actually disagree with that. I always say you treat people the way they need to be treated, because we are all very individual and not everyone needs or wants to be treated in the same way, because they have a different value set and they have different experiences and they feel differently. So head coaches need to be able to tap into that and recognise what each member of their team staff requires. And I think from what you're saying is that's the skill set that these coaches require in order to deliver alongside yourself this whole genre of theming.
yes. And if I stick to football for just now, football and the big change, I think you'll agree, in the game is it's so transactional now. So you don't know how long a player is going to be at a club for, and you don't know how long a manager is going to be at a club for. So therefore, the process of building trust between player and coach, pardon me, becomes a lot more difficult, because the player's going, why should I buy into what you're doing? Because you might not be here for that long. And also the coach is going, I need these guys to win, so I need to be a bit more direct and make this a bit more technical. This is how we're going to play, and that's the end of it, and it's my way or the highway. So when you get very, very good coaches who understand the human piece and the connection, and they say, regardless of what my tactics are or how good my game plan is, the players that I'm coaching need to be able to run harder than the opposition. They need to be able to jump higher. They need to be able to, if there's a 50-50, are they going to back out of it or are they going to go in for it? And when times get tough, are they going to stick together? And if you've got a coach or a manager that's able to do that, and you've got the players very connected to each other and the coaching team, in particular the head coach, that's a very, very powerful cocktail, I suppose, and recipe for success. So from my experience working with Gary, he's been phenomenal at doing that because he's placed so much emphasis on how we connect with each other through the use of a theme every week and drawing parallels from the story and getting feedback from the players as well. In other words, what's working for you and how can we change things. And I suppose his biggest strength is not letting what he feels his emotions are or his thoughts about a certain reflection on the game muddy the water between what he's thinking, what the players are thinking. So he's really, really good at extracting information from the players and going, "Oh, actually, I thought this was terrible. They thought it was great," or "I thought this was great. They really hated that. We need to change things." So it massively goes back to almost like why are we playing the game in the first place? Because we all love it. It's a sport we've played since we were young, and for most men that play football or have played rugby or have played a sport, a lot of their greatest memories are playing when they're young with their mates in the park. And if you can create an environment where you've got a team of men, rugby or football, go down into the field and they feel like they're playing with their mates in the park, they're going to be pretty relaxed and they're going to be able to perform to a better standard. And I think there's often quite a leap from when players are younger and they're quite fearless to suddenly going into an environment where they've got huge expectation on their shoulders and they don't know how to cope with that. So putting a video on of Batman or the Brownlee brothers or Tiger Woods, for example, players are looking at that and going, "Oh, this is a bit different." But then they start to see people in these videos that have inspired them when they were that age, running about with their friends in the park, and suddenly it provides a bit of a comfort blanket because they think, actually, yeah, there are parts of the game that are different, but the essence of why we compete in sport is exactly the same. And again, back to the point, it takes a very, very thoughtful and well planned coach to do that. And the process of doing it takes quite a long time. It's
Yeah, that was the next question. I think the process that's involved in it. So, can you talk about deciding, you and the coach deciding on what the theme is? So, what is the theme and why? And then the process that's involved in delivering this. So, who is responsible? Who are the people that are delivering it? What is the timeline, for example? So, are you just looking one game ahead, 4 weeks ahead? It will differ, I'm sure. But could you give us a practical timeline of what that looks like? So, for the listeners that are on the pod here, they can get a real tangible look and feel to, right, okay, I can understand how this is done. Whether I've got the skill set to deliver that or not is a different matter, but I get an understanding of practically how I go from this is the idea and this is how we play it, because surely there's got to be a consistency day in, day out whilst you're delivering this, so that the message is well understood and that emotional buy-in by everyone is there.
so to put it into practical, relatable terms, if you're part of a coaching team and you have a debrief with your assistant coaches, you'll probably have one eye on the performance that's just gone and one eye on your next opposition. And there'll be a slight change in the way you need to approach the game. So I'll talk in rugby terms because that's what I know the best. So for the previous game, the threat of the opposition may have been around offloading. So the way we have to defend will be slightly different. And then where we're going to get a lot of success in the next game is if we can get on top of them at the ruck or the breakdown, as they call it. So we have a slight tactical change, and then we plan our week around that, and we drip feed the important information in. It works almost the same way for introducing a theme. So I will catch up with the head coach, and I'll say, what is your gut telling you about the next game? And like Gary Bowyer, for example, 400 top flight games as a manager. He's got pretty good human instinct and he's got a lot of experience in there. And same with a lot of international rugby coaches or professional rugby coaches have probably played the game as well. So they've got hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of information here and in their gut. In the world where AI is taking over, we're playing a sport with human beings, so we need to keep human instinct at the heart of it. And so I'll have a chat and I'll say, what are you thinking? And sometimes it's I don't know. I don't quite know. So I'll go on a process of asking questions of how do you think the players are feeling after this game? How do you think they'll feel when they see the opposition that are coming to the stadium on Saturday? Who are their key threats? What do you think a win at this stage of the season would do for the team? What do you think a loss would do? And the more information I can extract, the more words that come out, and words are attached to feelings or emotions. And then I'll say, look, this is what I'm hearing. What are you thinking? And then I'll get back, this is what I think is going to get us over the line in the next game. After that, I'll say, okay, give me 24, 48 hours. And this is the part I love about it the most. I'll go and sit in a coffee shop and, sieve through all my notes, all the films I've watched growing up, listen to music that has connotations of what we're trying to get to, research sporting stories, and go, that actually aligns with where the team are at just now. But not just in terms of the outcome, but the process in which the team have gone through to get there. So what were their circumstances? Who were some of the key players? Do they align with the personalities that we've got in the team? Who's the head coach? So it always helps if the head coach has got a similar personality. In other words, the human side of it, inspiring, connected people, had gone through some adversity, had worn quite a lot of criticism. That always helps. I'll then come back to the coach and go, here's what I'm thinking. We'll then agree, and then we'll then look at ways of bringing it to life. So saying to the players in a meeting at the start of the week, this weekend, this is our theme, and then putting on a quick video and then not returning to it is very meaningless. Yes. So you have to convince players that you're all in on it as the coach and you've really thought about it. Similar to a training session. If you're a player in a training session and it's been brilliant, everything's been clearly thought out and there's purpose and meaning behind everything, you'll buy into it and you'll learn. And as we said right at the start, curiosity keeps you motivated. So during the week, we'll look at opportunities in training sessions to add the theme in. So if the theme is something related to executing when the moment matters, we will engineer opportunities for players to have 1v1 games of football tennis or table tennis, or like a thumb war, something in which there's people crowding around and you've got to execute in the moment. And we'll relate that as well, and that'll be part of team meetings. We'll also try and use props during the week. So there was a game not so long ago where we had a tennis one, and you could see Gary on the TV with a tennis ball on the touchline bouncing it up and down.
Chris, I remember someone who was at the game who called me afterwards and said, what was up with Gary with his tennis ball in his hand? I said, I don't know, but I'll ask him, but you've just reminded me. So that was the reason behind him bouncing the tennis ball.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it as well, is other people will look and think, what's going on there? So regardless of whether people like it or not, if they're focused on what we're doing, it gives us a little psychological advantage. So we themed that game on Carlos Alcaraz and his comeback in the US Open after losing to Sinner. And so we're playing the same team again. I think the commentator referred to it as Gary having a stress ball on the touchline, but I knew he wasn't. He was just, that was the, but yeah. So using props is a good way to do it, and then we try and pick out, if we can get video footage, we try and pick out points where we'll drip feed the information in during the week. So if the team has 3 meetings, for example, the meetings all start with a small 3-minute clip that relates to the theme, and then on Saturday or game day, for example, you're either going to have a situation where you're leaving a hotel to go to a ground, or the players are arriving because they're playing at home. So the team talk is sometimes delivered through a video of the theme, and there's actually no need for the coach to speak. And the powerful thing about it is, and when we interviewed some players last year, they said it was, if you imagine at the start of the week where you've got a pyramid and the building blocks are all the information that's going in, by the time you get to, I've put my boots on, ready to go out for the warm up, the final block in the pyramid is just a 2-minute video of the theme, but suddenly everybody in the dressing room knows exactly what the mindset is, and everything that's been discussed, practiced, discovered that week suddenly all makes sense, and everybody goes, we know exactly what we're going to have to do, and therefore the coach doesn't have to say anything. And
The power of the mind.
the power of the mind, exactly.
Delivered, though, in a very skillful way. And I think that...
Yeah, definitely. And there's no guarantee that, I think that's the important thing. There's no guarantee you're going to go out and win. However, what you can guarantee is if you just do the same every week, and the players aren't excited to be there, you're probably going to have more varying levels in performance, because a lot of it is down to, well, I suppose, fear of the unknown and therefore chance. So, do we get players ready, through something visual that's been built up during the week that brings them all to one mindset before they go out to warm up and engage in battle, so to speak?
I go back to this time of the year. It's been termed sacking season. Who knows if we'll see the same over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months. But sporting directors in this space will be looking at their head coaches, will be looking at future head coaches, and they're looking for those that do have that extra skill set at the right time in the right environments to take the team beyond those challenges that they're going to face throughout the course of the season. And we can talk about leadership from a very theoretical perspective. For me, it can be way too prescribed at times, but I think what we've discussed here across a multiple of different sports is how you can overcome those challenges in a very applied and different way to really engage on an emotional level with the individuals that are playing that sport. So, Chris, it's been really interesting to talk it through, and I'm sure we could go on and go into much more detail. So, where can people find you? Where can people get in touch with you so that they can delve much deeper than we have and get an understanding with your expertise in this space?
So, LinkedIn page is probably a good place to start. Most professionals are on there just now, so you've put a couple of posts up previously and tagged me in them, so they can get directly to me that way. I've also got an Instagram page, so it's at Chris Martin IXP. But I'm very keen to work with as many people as I can in different sports. And yeah, there's no harm in sending me a message, reach out, and one conversation can sometimes spark something brilliant for a team or an athlete or an individual. So please do reach out.
Chris, it's been great. It's been really interesting. I'm sure we'll keep in touch, and I'll keep my eyes out for the work that you're doing in the future. Appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.